Your wife is preventing your son from walking. That's what a poor girl dared to say to the millionaire. At first he thought it was impossible, until he noticed something strange in his son's eyes. Moved by doubt, he decided to act, right there in front of everyone. What happened next left the mansion in absolute silence. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The glass walls of the Malibu mansion caught every shade of the sunset, bathing the spacious living room in gold and crimson. William Parker stood by the window, martini in hand, staring at the rolling waves of the Pacific. The multi-million-dollar view that had once brought him joy now only amplified his loneliness. 6 months had passed since the car accident that took his wife Rebecca away and left their 8-year-old son in a wheelchair. William, a tech magnate whose business acumen had built one of California's most successful software companies, found himself utterly powerless against grief. His empire of algorithms and innovations meant nothing when faced with his son's stalled recovery. Medical reports claimed Ethan's spine had healed properly, yet the boy remained unable to walk. "Mr. Parker, Ethan's finished his dinner," said Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper who had been with the family for over a decade. Her lined face carried the same shadow of sorrow that had settled over the household. William nodded, setting down his untouched drink. "Thank you, Helen. I'll go read to him now." The hallway leading to Ethan's room was lined with contemporary art pieces, Rebecca's collection. She had filled their home with color and life, qualities that had drained away with her absence. William paused outside his son's door, composing himself before entering. Ethan needed his strength, not his sorrow. "Hey, champ," he said, pushing. "Open the door." "Ready for our story?" Ethan sat in his wheelchair by the window, small fingers tracing patterns on the glass. At the sound of his father's voice, he turned. His smile, so much like Rebecca's, was the one light William clung to. "Can we read the space one again?" Ethan asked, wheeling himself toward his bed. His thin arms had grown stronger from months of propelling himself around, but his legs remained motionless beneath a blanket. William helped him into bed, a routine they had perfected. "Of course we can." He settled beside his son, opening the dog-eared book about astronauts and distant planets, Ethan's current obsession. Halfway through the chapter, Ethan fell asleep, his breathing deep and even. William stayed, watching his son's chest rise and fall, wondering how many more nights they would spend like this, trapped in a purgatory of waiting for progress that doctors couldn't explain. A gentle knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Mrs. Winters stood in the doorway, her silhouette backlit by the hallway light. "There's someone here to see you, Mr. Parker. A Miss Blackwood from the Pacific Wellness Center. She says you had an appointment?" William frowned. "I don't recall scheduling anything." "She mentioned it was about specialized therapy for Ethan. Said she'd emailed your assistant." William carefully extracted himself from beside Ethan and followed Mrs. Winters downstairs. In the living room stood a woman with auburn hair that caught the light from the chandelier. She turned as he entered, offering a professional smile that nevertheless carried warmth. "Mr. Parker, I'm Catherine Blackwood. I apologize for the late hour, but your assistant confirmed this time would work." She extended her hand, her grip firm and confident. "I specialize in pediatric rehabilitation at Pacific Wellness." William shook her hand, studying her face. There was something sincere in her expression that disarmed his initial skepticism. "I don't remember my assistant mentioning this meeting." Catherine's smile faltered slightly. "I understand you're busy. Your assistant Lisa mentioned you were interested in our program for Ethan. We've had remarkable success with cases similar to your son's." "Lisa retired last month," William said, crossing his arms. "Who exactly are you?" Catherine's composure slipped momentarily before she recovered. "There's been a misunderstanding then. I'm genuinely who I say I am, but perhaps someone on your team made an error in scheduling." She reached into her bag, producing a business card and a glossy brochure. "Our center works with children who've experienced trauma-related mobility issues. Sometimes when physical injuries heal but mobility doesn't return, there are psychological factors at play." Despite his suspicion, William found himself intrigued. You're suggesting Ethan's condition is psychological? Not exactly, Catherine clarified, but the mind-body connection is powerful. Children who experience trauma alongside physical injury sometimes develop blocks that traditional physical therapy doesn't address. William gestured toward the sitting area. Please, have a seat. Tell me more about your program. As Catherine explained her therapeutic approach, William observed her animated gestures and the genuine passion in her voice. For the first time in months, he felt a flicker of hope. I'd like to meet Ethan if possible, Catherine said. Just a brief introduction. I wouldn't wake him if he's sleeping. He is asleep, William confirmed. But if you're available tomorrow, perhaps you could come by in the afternoon. I'd like Dr. Reynolds, Ethan's current physician, to be present as well. Catherine nodded. Of course, I always prefer to work alongside existing medical teams. After scheduling a proper appointment and showing Catherine out, William returned to his study. He researched Pacific Wellness Center until well after midnight, finding it to be a legitimate and respected institution. Catherine Blackwood's credentials checked out. She held advanced degrees in occupational therapy with a specialization in pediatric trauma. The next day, Dr. Jason Reynolds arrived first, reviewing Ethan's morning physical therapy session. A respected neurologist who had been overseeing Ethan's case since the accident, Dr. Reynolds had become a fixture in their lives. Any progress? William asked, the same question he posed every visit. Dr. Reynolds shook his head. Physically, everything indicates he should be able to stand at minimum. We're missing something. When Catherine arrived, she greeted Dr. Reynolds with professional courtesy, though William noticed a subtle tension between them. Dr. Blackwood, Reynolds acknowledged, I've heard of your work. Quite unconventional, isn't it? Evidence-based. Actually, Catherine replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, just focused on areas traditional medicine sometimes overlooks. William led them to the sunroom, where Ethan sat in his wheelchair, a tablet in his lap displaying a space simulation game. The boy looked up as they entered, his eyes immediately drawn to Catherine. Ethan, this is Miss Blackwood. She works with kids like you to help them get stronger, William explained. Catherine crouched to Ethan's eye level. It's nice to meet you, Ethan. Your dad tells me you're interested in space. Ethan nodded, suddenly shy. I want to be an astronaut. That's a wonderful goal, Catherine said, her voice gentle. Astronauts need to be very brave and work hard. At their training, I think you have what it takes. Something in Ethan's expression shifted, a tiny spark of something William hadn't seen in months, pride. Over the following weeks, Catherine became a regular presence in their home. Her sessions with Ethan differed dramatically from his previous therapy. Rather than focusing exclusively on his legs, she engaged his entire body and mind, incorporating games and imagination exercises that left Ethan laughing, a sound that had become rare in the mansion. Dr. Reynolds observed these sessions with growing skepticism, pulling William aside after a particularly energetic session that left Ethan exhausted but smiling. I'm concerned about Ms. Blackwood's approach, Reynolds said in a low voice. It lacks scientific rigor. I've reviewed her methods, and while they may lift Ethan's spirits, I see no mechanism by which they would restore his mobility. William glanced through the doorway at Catherine, who was helping Ethan back into his wheelchair, their heads bent together in conversation. He's happier than he's been since the accident. Happiness won't make him walk again, Reynolds countered. I'm recommending a more aggressive physical therapy regimen and possibly another surgical consultation. That night, after everyone had left and Ethan was asleep, William sat on the terrace overlooking the ocean. The sound of footsteps behind him was unexpected. I thought everyone had gone home, he said, turning to find Catherine standing in the doorway. I forgot my notebook, she explained, holding up a leather-bound journal. She hesitated, then asked, Mind if I join you for a moment? William gestured to the chair beside him, and for several minutes they sat in companionable silence, watching the moonlight on the water. He's going to walk again, Catherine said finally. I've seen that look in his eyes before. He wants to, but something's holding him back. What do you think it is? William asked, turning to study her profile in the dim light. Catherine met his gaze. Fear, but not the kind you might expect. We'll figure it out together. For the first time since the accident, William felt the weight on his shoulders lighten slightly. There was something about Catherine's quiet confidence that made him believe her. What neither of them noticed was the small figure watching from the shadows of the house, Olivia Taylor, the 10-year-old granddaughter of their cook, who had been staying at the mansion while her grandmother recovered from minor surgery. Her curious eyes narrowed as she observed the growing connection between William and Catherine, storing away her observations like precious stones. As spring melted into summer, Catherine's presence in the Parker mansion became as natural as the Pacific breeze that swept through the open windows. Her therapy sessions with Ethan evolved into something that resembled play more than medical treatment, yet William noticed subtle changes in his son, not in his physical capabilities but in his spirit. Ethan laughed more, his eyes brightened when Catherine arrived, and he spoke of the future again. "I need someone to help me with Ethan's care full-time," William said one evening as he and Catherine walked along the private beach below the mansion. "Someone who understands his needs the way you do." Catherine tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, considering his words. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Parker?" "William," he corrected, watching the sunset paint her profile in gold. "And yes, I suppose I am. You've brought something back. To this house that I thought was lost forever." "Hope?" Catherine said softly, her eyes on the horizon. "More than that," William replied. "Life." 2 weeks later, Catherine moved into the guest house on the property. The arrangement made practical sense. Ethan's therapy could happen throughout the day rather than in scheduled sessions, and Catherine would be available for any breakthroughs or setbacks. But privately, William acknowledged to himself that having her nearby eased his own loneliness as well. Dr. Reynolds's visits became increasingly tense. On a sweltering July afternoon, he arrived for his weekly assessment of Ethan to find the boy in the indoor pool with Catherine, both laughing as they played a game involving floating toys that Ethan had to reach for. "This isn't physical therapy," Reynolds remarked coolly as he observed from the poolside. "This is playtime." "It's both," Catherine replied, helping Ethan to the edge of the pool. "His core strength has improved significantly. Haven't you noticed?" Reynolds ignored her comment, instead focusing on Ethan. "How are your legs feeling today, buddy? Any new sensations?" Ethan's smile faded. He glanced at Catherine before answering. "They feel the same." "We need to try the electrical stimulation again," Reynolds said to William, who stood nearby. "And I'd like to consult with a specialist in Denver who's pioneering a new approach for cases like Ethan's." "More needles?" Ethan asked, his voice small. William saw fear flash across his son's face, the same fear that had been a constant companion since the accident. He looked to Catherine, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Let's discuss this later," William told Reynolds, ending the conversation. Later that evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Reynolds confronted William in his study. "You're letting your personal feelings for Miss Blackwood cloud your judgment about what's best for your son." William's jaw tightened. "My feelings have nothing to do with this. I'm making decisions based on what I see helping Ethan." "What you see is a happier child, yes, but not one who's any closer to walking." Reynolds placed a folder on the desk between them. "These are the latest test results. There's no physiological reason why Ethan can't bear weight on his legs. The blockage is psychological, which means Catherine's approach might be exactly what he needs," William interrupted. Reynolds leaned forward. "Or it means he needs proper psychiatric evaluation and treatment, not pool games and storytelling." The argument ended in a stalemate, with Reynolds reluctantly agreeing to continue monitoring Ethan's progress for another month before pushing for more invasive treatments. What neither man knew was that Olivia had been sitting in the kitchen, nearby, ostensibly helping her grandmother prepare meals for the week ahead, but actually absorbing every word of their heated discussion. At 10 years old, Olivia possessed a perception beyond her years. a quality her grandmother, Martha, alternately praised and worried about. "You shouldn't be eavesdropping on Mr. Parker's private conversations," Martha scolded gently as she noticed her granddaughter's distraction. Olivia returned her attention to the vegetables she was washing. "I wasn't trying to, they were talking really loud." She hesitated, then asked, "Grandma, do you think Ethan will ever walk again?" Martha's hands stilled over the dough she was kneading. "That's in God's hands, sweetheart. But the doctors say there's nothing wrong with his legs. Not anymore." "The mind is a powerful thing," Martha replied. "Sometimes it protects us in ways we don't understand." Olivia pondered this as she continued her task. She had been staying with her grandmother at the Parker mansion for nearly 2 months now, ever since her mother had taken a travel nursing assignment in Alaska. At first, she had been intimidated by the enormous house with its museum-like quiet and the sad boy in the wheelchair, but gradually she had found spaces where she belonged. The kitchen with her grandmother, the gardens where the groundskeeper let her plant flowers, and lately, the pool area where she sometimes watched Ethan's therapy sessions. Catherine had noticed her interest and invited her to join them occasionally, teaching both children exercises disguised as games. Olivia enjoyed these sessions, and the way Catherine treated her as someone capable and important, not just a child to be entertained. One afternoon, while Catherine was on a call with her clinic, Olivia found Ethan alone in the sunroom, staring out at the ocean. "Want to play a game?" she asked, dropping into the chair opposite his wheelchair. Ethan shrugged, his expression distant. "What kind of game?" "I Spy," Olivia suggested. "Or we could go to the game room and play that space." "A video game you like?" "I don't feel like moving right now," Ethan said, his voice flat. Olivia studied him for a moment. "Are you sad about your mom?" The directness of her question startled Ethan. Adults never asked him so plainly. They used careful phrases like, "your loss" and "your grief journey." "Yeah," he admitted. "Sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like. Dad has videos, but it's not the same." "My dad left when I was 4, Olivia offered. "I don't remember his voice at all." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, 2 children sharing the weight of absence. "Catherine makes my dad smile again," Ethan said eventually. "Like my mom used to." Olivia nodded. "She's nice. Do you think they'll get married?" Ethan's eyes widened. "I don't know. Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" Ethan considered this, his small face serious. "I think so, but—" He trailed off, looking down at his immobile legs. "But what?" Olivia pressed. "Nothing," Ethan said quickly. "Want to play that video game now? You can push my chair." As summer progressed, Catherine's influence extended beyond Ethan's therapy. She suggested renovations to make the mansion more accessible, arranged for a tutor to keep Ethan engaged intellectually, and gradually her personal items began to appear throughout the house. A throw blanket here, books there, fresh flowers, on tables that had been bare for months. William found himself looking forward to their evening conversations on the terrace after Ethan was asleep. Catherine never pushed for more than friendship, respecting the complicated grief that still shadowed him, but there was an undeniable connection growing between them. "I've been thinking," he said one night, as they shared a bottle of wine under the stars. "Ethan's birthday is next month. It's the first since Rebecca." He couldn't finish the sentence. Catherine covered his hand with hers. "It's going to be difficult, but we'll make it special for him." The warmth of her hand on his felt right, in a way that William hadn't expected to feel again. "We," he repeated softly. "You've become part of our lives so completely, Catherine. I can't imagine where we'd be without you." What he didn't say, couldn't yet say, was how his feelings for her had grown from gratitude into something deeper, something that both exhilarated and terrified him. Dr. Reynolds continued his weekly visits, his disapproval of Catherine now barely concealed. After examining Ethan one afternoon, he requested a private conversation with William. "I've consulted with colleagues about Ethan's case," Reynolds began once they were alone in William's study. "There's a concern that his psychological block might be reinforced by his environment." William frowned. "Meaning what exactly?" "Meaning that perhaps there are factors in his daily life that are, unconsciously or otherwise, encouraging him to remain in the wheelchair. Reynolds's gaze was pointed. Ms. Blackwood's methods, while well-intentioned, may be giving him permission to stay exactly where he is. "That's absurd," William said, his voice hardening. "Catherine has done more for Ethan's recovery than all your tests and specialists combined." Reynolds leaned forward. "Has she? Because from a medical standpoint, he hasn't progressed at all in terms of mobility. And now I'm hearing from his tutor that he becomes anxious when asked about walking, which is new behavior." Before William could respond, there was a commotion from outside, a splash followed by shouting. They rushed to the window overlooking the pool area to see Catherine pulling Ethan from the water. His wheelchair tipped over at the pool's edge. William ran outside, heart pounding. By the time he reached them, Catherine had Ethan wrapped in a towel, his thin body shivering despite the summer heat. "What happened?" William demanded, kneeling beside his son. "It was an accident," Catherine explained, her voice calm but her eyes worried. "Ethan was reaching for a toy too close to the edge." "I'm okay, Dad," Ethan assured him, though his face was pale. "Catherine saved me." Later, after Ethan had been checked over by Dr. Reynolds and put to bed early, William found Catherine in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, her gaze distant. "Thank you," he said simply, "for being so quick to react." Catherine looked up, her expression troubled. "William, there's something I need to tell you about Ethan's recovery, something I've suspected for a while now." William's pulse quickened. "What about his recovery?" Catherine set her mug down, choosing her words carefully. "I believe Ethan is experiencing a phenomenon called conversion disorder. It's when psychological stress manifests as physical symptoms. In his case, the trauma of the accident and losing his mother has created a neurological block that's preventing him from walking, even though his body is physically capable." Dr. Reynolds suggested something similar, William acknowledged. "The difference is in the approach," Catherine explained. "Reynolds wants to force breakthrough with aggressive therapy and medication. I believe Ethan needs to feel safe enough to walk on his own terms. The fear is keeping him paralyzed, both literally and figuratively." William leaned against the counter, processing her words. What kind of fear could be that powerful? Catherine hesitated. "I think he's afraid of moving forward without Rebecca. Walking again means accepting a new normal, one where his mother isn't coming back." The insight struck William like a physical blow. He hadn't considered that Ethan's immobility might be tied to grief rather than physical trauma. It made a painful kind of sense. "There's something else," Catherine continued, her voice softer now. "I've been monitoring his leg muscles during our sessions. There are moments, brief involuntary moments, when he engages them. He's not consciously aware of it, but his body remembers how to walk." Hope surged through William. "So, you believe he can recover completely?" "I do," Catherine said, certainty in her voice, "but it needs to happen organically. If we push too hard, we risk reinforcing the psychological barriers." Their conversation was interrupted by Martha entering the kitchen, her expression apologetic. "Excuse me, Mr. Parker. Ethan's asking for you, says he can't sleep." William nodded and headed upstairs, his mind racing with Catherine's revelations. In Ethan's room, he found his son sitting up in bed, clutching the stuffed astronaut toy that had been a gift from Rebecca. "Hey, buddy, heard you're having trouble sleeping." William sat on the edge of the bed. Ethan nodded, his eyes solemn in the dim light. "I keep thinking about falling in the pool. It was scary." "I'm sure it was," William agreed, "but you're safe now." "Catherine pulled me out really fast," Ethan said, like she was waiting for it to happen. Something in his son's phrasing gave William pause. "What do you mean, waiting for it to happen?" Ethan shrugged, his fingers fidgeting with the toy. "I don't know. She was just there super fast." William brushed it off as a child's perception of time during a frightening event. "Well, I'm grateful. She was nearby. Now how about I read another chapter of your space book?" After Ethan finally drifted to sleep, William found himself wandering the quiet halls of the mansion. The house felt different now, less like a mausoleum to his former life and more like a home again. Catherine had brought that change, along with hope for Ethan's recovery, yet something about their conversation in the kitchen had left him unsettled. Past the doorway to the sunroom, and noticed a small figure curled up on one of the window seats. Olivia was reading by the light of a small book lamp, so absorbed that she didn't notice him until he spoke. "It's pretty late for reading, isn't it?" She startled, nearly dropping her book. "Mr. Parker, I'm sorry. Grandma thinks I'm asleep, but I couldn't stop thinking." "Thinking about what?" William asked, curious about this serious child who had become a quiet fixture in their household. Olivia hesitated, seeming to choose her words carefully. "About Ethan and Miss Catherine." William sat in a chair across from her. "What about them?" "I was watching them at the pool today," Olivia admitted, "before Ethan fell in." "You saw what happened?" William leaned forward, suddenly alert. Olivia nodded, her expression troubled. Miss Catherine was helping Ethan reach for toys in the water. She kept putting them farther away each time, making him lean more from his chair. I thought it was weird because usually she's super careful about his safety. William felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air-conditioned room. "Did you see him fall in?" "Not exactly," Olivia said. "I went to get my swimming suit because Grandma said I could join them after finishing my chores. When I came back, Ethan was in the water and Miss Catherine was pulling him out." William processed this information, unsure what to make of it. Could Catherine have been pushing Ethan too hard in her therapy? Or was this simply a child's misinterpretation of events? "Thank you for telling me, Olivia, but I'm sure Miss Catherine would never do anything to put Ethan at risk. She cares about him very much." Olivia nodded, though her expression remained uncertain. "I know. She's really nice to me too. She gave me a new sketchbook and said I have talent." She paused, then added, "But sometimes I think she acts different when you're not around." Before William could ask what she meant, Martha appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and concern. "There you are, Olivia." "I'm so sorry, Mr. Parker. She's supposed to be in bed." Martha crossed the room, placing a gentle hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "It's fine, Martha," William assured her. "We were just having a chat. Olivia's welcome to use the sunroom for reading any time." After they left, William remained seated, turning over Olivia's observations in his mind. Children often misinterpreted adult behaviors, seeing mysteries where there were none. And yet, there was something about Olivia's careful way of speaking that suggested she wasn't prone to exaggeration or fantasy. The next morning, William observed Catherine's therapy session with Ethan more closely. They were in the garden, with Catherine guiding Ethan through exercises that had him reaching and stretching from his wheelchair. Her methods were creative and engaged Ethan fully, but William noticed how she maintained complete control of each activity. "Let's try something new today," Catherine suggested as the session was winding down. "I want to see if you can feel this." She ran a small plastic wheel along the bottom of Ethan's foot. Ethan's face remained blank. "I can see you doing it, but I can't feel anything." "That's okay," Catherine said, her voice encouraging. "We'll keep trying. The pathways in your brain just need to remember." Later that afternoon, Dr. Reynolds arrived for his scheduled visit. William pulled him aside before he saw Ethan. "I want to discuss your concerns about Catherine's methods," William said, leading Reynolds to his study. "You mentioned that Ethan seems anxious when asked about walking. Have you observed anything else that troubles you?" Reynolds considered the question. "There's nothing concrete, more a pattern of behaviors. Ethan shows progress in every area, except mobility. It's as if there's an invisible line he won't cross. When I mention new treatments that might help him walk, he looks to Miss Blackwood before responding, almost seeking permission." William frowned. "That could be simply because he trusts her, or because he's been conditioned to defer to her," Reynolds countered. "Look, I'm not suggesting anything malicious, but there are cases where well-meaning caregivers can inadvertently reinforce dependency. It's called factitious disorder, imposed on another, previously known as Munchausen by proxy. You can't seriously be suggesting that Catherine is keeping Ethan from recovering," William said, his voice hardening. Reynolds held up his hands. I'm not making accusations. I'm raising possibilities that we need to consider professionally. Ms. Blackwood has become deeply embedded in your lives very quickly. She's now living on your property, influencing every aspect of Ethan's care, and, forgive me for being blunt, becoming emotionally involved with you. William wanted to dismiss Reynolds's concerns outright, but fragments of doubt had begun to form in his mind. Ethan's comment about Catherine being ready when he fell in the pool, Olivia's observation about Catherine's behavior changing when he wasn't present, the way Ethan looked to Catherine before answering questions. What would you suggest? William asked finally. A second opinion from a specialist who hasn't been involved in Ethan's case, Reynolds replied. And perhaps some sessions without Ms. Blackwood present to see if Ethan's responses differ. William agreed to consider these suggestions, though the conversation left him deeply unsettled. Catherine had brought life back to their home. Could he really doubt her intentions based on vague suspicions? That evening, William suggested taking Ethan to the beach below the mansion, just the two of them. Catherine readily agreed, helping prepare a small picnic for them to enjoy at sunset. As William pushed Ethan's wheelchair across the sand to a flat area with a perfect view of the ocean, he felt a rare moment of peace. Away from the mansion, away from medical concerns and therapeutic schedules, they were simply father and son. I miss doing stuff like this, Ethan said, as William spread a blanket and helped him from the wheelchair to sit on it. Me too, buddy. William sat beside him, opening the picnic basket Catherine had prepared. We used to come down here all the time with Mom. At the mention of Rebecca, Ethan grew quiet, picking at the sandwich William handed him. After several minutes of silence, he asked, Dad, do you think Mum would be mad if you married someone else? The question caught William off guard. That's a pretty big question, Ethan. What made you think of that? Ethan shrugged, still not meeting his father's eyes. I heard Mrs. Winters telling Grandma Martha that you and Catherine look at each other like you and Mum used to. William chose his words carefully. Your mum would want us to be happy, Ethan. She loved us both so much. But Catherine and I are just friends right now. But you like her, Ethan pressed, like her. Despite the seriousness of the conversation, William had to smile at his son's phrasing. I care about her, yes. She's been a great help. To us. Would you be mad if I could walk again? Ethan asked suddenly, the question seemingly coming from nowhere. William was stunned. Mad? Ethan, walking again is exactly what we all want for you. It would make me happier than anything in the world. Ethan's face crumpled, tears welling in his eyes. But Catherine says I have to be careful, that if I try too hard I might hurt myself worse and never walk again. William felt as if the ground beneath them had shifted. Catherine told you that. When? When we're alone, Ethan whispered. She says you worry too much already, so we shouldn't tell you about the bad. Things that could happen if I push too hard. William forced himself to keep his expression neutral, though his heart was pounding. What kind of bad things, Ethan? That my legs might get stuck forever, or that I might forget Mom if I get better too fast. Ethan wiped at his tears with the back of his hand. Sometimes I think I feel my legs, Dad, but Catherine says it's just my brain playing tricks and I shouldn't tell Dr. Reynolds because he'll want to do more tests that hurt. William pulled his son into a tight embrace, mind racing. The picture forming was disturbing, Catherine systematically isolating Ethan from other medical opinions, instilling fear about recovery and connecting his paralysis to his mother's memory. As they sat on the beach watching the sunset, William maintained a calm facade for Ethan's sake, but inside, determination was crystallizing. He needed to understand exactly what had been happening in his home while he wasn't watching. The following morning, William made a call to an old friend from college who had become a respected child psychologist in San Francisco. Without sharing specifics that might identify Ethan, he outlined the situation and his growing concerns. It's not unheard of, Dr. Samantha Collins told him. There are cases where caregivers, even professionals, develop unhealthy attachments to their patients. The dynamic you're describing, isolation from other medical opinions, creating fear around recovery, linking physical improvement to emotional betrayal, those are red flags, Will. But why? William asked. struggling to understand. What would Catherine gain from keeping Ethan in a wheelchair? Control, purpose, your gratitude and dependence, Samantha listed. Some people need to be needed in a way that becomes pathological. If Ethan recovers completely, her role in your lives diminishes. The conversation left William deeply troubled. He decided to implement a subtle test. At breakfast, he casually mentioned to Catherine that he'd scheduled a consultation with a specialist in pediatric neurology at UCLA Medical Center. I should have discussed it with you first, he acknowledged, watching her reaction carefully. But an opening came up unexpectedly in Dr. Sharma's schedule. He's supposed to be the best on the West Coast. Catherine's smile never faltered, but William noticed her knuckles whiten around her coffee mug. Of course you should explore all options for Ethan. When is the appointment? Tomorrow morning, William replied. I thought we could all go together. I have my monthly supervision at the clinic tomorrow, Catherine said smoothly, but you should absolutely take Ethan. Perhaps Dr. Reynolds could accompany you since he's familiar with the case history. Her response was reasonable, too reasonable, given her previous insistence on being involved in every aspect of Ethan's care. William felt a chill of confirmation. I'll ask him, William agreed, maintaining his casual tone. After breakfast, Catherine took Ethan to the indoor therapy room they'd established, closing the door for what she called their focus time, a daily session where they worked on concentration exercises that supposedly strengthened neural pathways. William had never questioned these private sessions before, trusting Catherine's expertise. Now, he wondered what actually happened behind that closed door. While they were occupied, William made his way to the guest house where Catherine had been living. He had never entered her space without invitation, respecting her privacy even as she had become integrated into their household. Now he hesitated only briefly before using his master key to unlock the door. The interior was neat and minimally decorated, with a few personal touches. Framed diplomas on the wall, a shelf of professional books, a vase of fresh flowers on the coffee table. William wasn't sure what he expected to find, but he began a methodical search, feeling like an intruder in his own property. In the bedroom, Catherine's laptop sat on a small desk. It was password protected, of course. William moved on to the desk drawers, finding nothing out of the ordinary until he reached the bottom drawer. There, beneath a stack of folders, he discovered a journal. His hands shook slightly as he opened it, knowing he was crossing a line but unable to turn back. The journal contained detailed notes on Ethan, daily observations, responses to therapy, medications. It seemed like the professional record-keeping of a dedicated therapist, until William reached entries from the past month. Ethan attempted to stand today when he thought I wasn't watching, one entry read. Reinforced potential consequences of pushing too hard. He responds well to the connection between physical recovery and emotional loyalty to Rebecca's memory. Another entry noted, William beginning to question time frame for improvement. Introduced. Concept of permanent psychological barriers to manage expectations. Reynolds remains a problem, considering options to discredit his approach. William felt physically ill as he continued reading. The journal documented a calculated campaign to keep Ethan dependent, using his grief and fear as tools of manipulation. Catherine had been systematically undermining Dr. Reynolds while presenting herself as Ethan's only path to a limited recovery, one that would keep her essential to both father and son indefinitely. He was so absorbed in the journal that he didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. William? Catherine's voice came from the doorway, surprise and hurt mingling in her tone. What are you doing in here? He turned slowly, the journal still open in his hands. Finding out who you really are. Catherine's expression shifted, vulnerability replaced by calculation so quickly that William wondered how he had ever missed the manipulation behind her warmth. You're upset, she said, her voice gentle but her eyes sharp. Let me explain. What you're reading. Those are therapeutic notes. Sometimes we use language that seems harsh in a clinical context. Don't, William cut her off. Don't try to explain this away. You've been deliberately keeping my son from recovering, making him believe he'd betray his mother's memory if he walked again. What kind of person does that to a child? Catherine's facade cracked just for a moment, revealing something cold beneath. Then she composed herself. You're misinterpreting my methods, William. Ethan's case is complex. The notes you're reading are part of a therapeutic approach called paradoxical intention. Sometimes we have to work with a patient's resistance rather than against it. Is that what you call it when you tell an 8-year-old boy that walking might make him forget his mother? William's voice shook with rage. Or when you convince him that trying to stand could leave him permanently disabled? You need to... Calm down, Catherine said, taking a step toward him. You're not thinking clearly. We've made so much progress with Ethan. Don't throw that away because you misunderstood some clinical notes. The appointment at UCLA tomorrow isn't real, William said flatly. It was a test and you failed it, Catherine. You should have insisted on coming with us if you truly cared about Ethan's recovery. Something shifted in Catherine's demeanor. The caring therapist disappeared entirely, replaced by someone colder and more calculating. What exactly do you think is going to happen here, William? She asked, her voice hardening. You're going to fire me? Replace me with another specialist who'll start from scratch with Ethan? How do you think he'll respond to losing another person he trusts? She moved closer, her tone softening again. We've built something special here. Not just Ethan's care, but us. This family we've created. We're not a family, William said firmly. You're an employee who betrayed my trust and harmed my son. I want you out of my house today. Catherine's laugh was soft and unsettling. It's not that simple, William. Ethan trusts me completely. If I leave suddenly, who do you think he'll blame? How do you think it will affect his progress? And what about the things I know about this household? About you? Your grief drinking in the early days, your emotional absence when Ethan needed you most. The implied threat hung in the air between them. Before William could respond, a small sound from the doorway drew their attention. Olivia stood there, eyes wide, clutching her phone. I recorded everything you just said, she told Catherine, her young voice surprisingly steady. And I already sent it to my grandma. Catherine's expression contorted with anger. You little... Don't, William warned, stepping between them. Martha, he called out, knowing the housekeeper was never far from her granddaughter. Martha appeared behind Olivia, her face set in grim determination. I heard everything, Mr. Parker, and Olivia did send me the recording. I've already called Dr. Reynolds. Catherine looked from one face to another, calculating her options. Finally, she straightened her shoulders and adopted a professional mask. This is a tragic misunderstanding that will only hurt Ethan in the long run. I'll gather my things and be gone by evening. My clinic will be in touch regarding the termination of our contract. I'll have security escort you while you pack, William said coldly. And if you attempt to contact Ethan or anyone in this household again, I'll pursue legal action. After Catherine was escorted to the guest house with a security guard from the estate's gatehouse, William faced the daunting task of explaining the situation to Ethan. He found his son in the sunroom, working on a model rocket with an expression of concentration that reminded William painfully of Rebecca. Hey, buddy, he said, sitting beside Ethan. We need to talk about something important. Ethan looked up, his eyes immediately concerned. Is something wrong with Catherine? She didn't come back after she went to get more clay for our project. William took a deep breath. Catherine won't be working with us anymore, Ethan. She hasn't been honest about your recovery. Ethan's face crumpled in confusion. What do you mean? I found out that she's been telling you things that aren't true, William explained gently. About walking again, about your mom, about what might happen if you try to stand. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. But she said she was helping me, that she was keeping me safe. I know she did, William said, pulling his son into a hug. And that's what makes what she did so wrong. She made you afraid of getting better. As Ethan cried against his shoulder, William felt equal measures of rage toward Catherine and guilt for his own failure to protect his son. How had he been so blind, so willing to hand over his trust to someone who had targeted them at their most vulnerable? Dr. Reynolds arrived an hour later, having cleared his schedule upon receiving Martha's call. He listened gravely as William explained what he had discovered, then asked to speak with Ethan alone. He might be more forthcoming about Catherine's methods without you present, Reynolds explained. Children often try to protect their parents from upsetting information. William reluctantly agreed and spent an agonizing 45 minutes pacing the hallway while Reynolds spoke with Ethan. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression was troubled. "It's worse than we thought," Reynolds said quietly. She was conducting what she called secret tests when they were alone, having him try to stand, then deliberately creating pain by pressing on nerve points in his legs. She convinced him that the pain was proof his body wasn't ready, that trying to walk would cause permanent damage. William felt physically ill. How could she do that to a child? "People with this pathology are expert manipulators," Reynolds said. She identified your vulnerabilities, your grief, your guilt, your desperation for Ethan's recovery, and exploited them perfectly. And she used Ethan's love for his mother as the ultimate psychological barrier. "What do we do now?" William asked, feeling more lost than he had since the immediate aftermath of the accident. "We start over," Reynolds said firmly, "with a team approach, complete transparency, and an understanding that recovery will be both physical and psychological. Ethan needs to trust his own body again, and he needs to separate recovery from any feelings of disloyalty to Rebecca." In the days that followed Catherine's departure, the mansion felt like a different place. William had all the locks changed and increased security, though Catherine had left without further incident. Ethan alternated between confusion, anger, and grief, not just for Catherine's betrayal, but for the revelation that his own body had been capable of more than he'd been led to believe. Dr. Reynolds recommended a child psychiatrist who specialized in trauma, and William made sure he was present for every session, rebuilding trust with his son one difficult conversation at a time. They established a new physical therapy regimen with a team from UCLA Medical Center, with all sessions conducted in the open and thoroughly documented. Through it all, Olivia remained a quiet, supportive presence. Her quick thinking had provided irrefutable evidence of Catherine's manipulation, preventing any attempt to twist the narrative. William made sure she understood how grateful he was, though the full significance of her intervention was perhaps beyond her 10-year-old comprehension. One evening, about 2 weeks after Catherine's departure, William found Olivia and Ethan in the game room playing a video game together. He paused in the doorway, watching as Ethan laughed at something Olivia said, a genuine laugh that had been rare even before Catherine's betrayal had come to light. "Mr. Parker," Martha said softly, appearing beside him. "I wanted to let you know that my daughter's assignment in Alaska is ending next month. Olivia and I will be moving back to our apartment in Santa Monica." William turned to her, suddenly realizing how much they had come to depend on both Martha and Olivia. "Martha, I know this is presumptuous, but would you consider staying on permanently? Not just as a housekeeper, but as part of this household. There's the carriage house at the back of the property that could be renovated into a proper home for you and Olivia." Martha looked surprised. "That's very generous, Mr. Parker, but we need you both," William said simply. "Ethan needs Olivia, and after everything that's happened, I think we could all use some stability and honesty in this house." As they stood watching the children, neither noticed when Ethan briefly pushed himself up from his seated position on the floor to reach for a controller, the movement natural and unthinking, the first truly spontaneous use of his legs since the accident. The renovation of the carriage house began immediately, with William insisting on creating a comfortable home for Martha and Olivia. He hired the best contractors in Malibu, having the space transformed into a modern 2-bedroom cottage with its own garden and privacy while remaining connected to the main property. "This is too much, Mr. Parker," Martha protested when he showed her the architectural plans. "We don't need anything so fancy." "It's not nearly enough," William replied, "after what you and Olivia did for us. Besides, I'm being selfish. Having you both nearby gives me peace of mind." September arrived with a gentle cooling of the Malibu air and a new routine for the household. Ethan began working with Dr. Larissa Chen, a pediatric physical therapist recommended by UCLA Medical Center. Unlike Catherine's secretive sessions, Dr. Chen's therapy took place in the open, often on the terrace overlooking the ocean, with William or Martha always present. The good news, Dr. Chen explained after her first week working with Ethan, is that there's no physical reason why Ethan can't walk again. His muscles have some atrophy from disuse, but that's reversible. The neural pathways are intact. We just need to rebuild his confidence and strength simultaneously. Progress was slow but measurable. Ethan began with simple standing exercises, supported between parallel bars installed in what had been Catherine's therapy room, now transformed with bright colors, large windows, and an atmosphere of optimistic energy that contrasted sharply with the previous clinical austerity. Dr. Reynolds continued to oversee Ethan's overall care, coordinating with Dr. Chen and Dr. Morris, the child psychiatrist, helping Ethan process both his grief for his mother and the betrayal by Catherine. The team approach provided transparency that helped rebuild Ethan's trust, though there were difficult days when he retreated into silence or frustration. "It's not fair," Ethan said during one particularly challenging therapy session when he'd fallen while attempting to take a step between the parallel bars. "Catherine said I'd get better faster if I just waited. This is harder." "She lied to you, buddy," William said gently, helping his son back to a standing position. "The truth is that getting better is hard work, but you're doing it. Every day you're getting stronger." Ethan gripped the bars, his knuckles white with effort. "But what if she was right about the other stuff? What if Mum would be sad if I walk? Again, she never got to see me in this chair. What if she doesn't recognize me when I'm not in it anymore?" The question broke William's heart. Dr. Morris had warned them that Catherine had created a powerful psychological link between Ethan's mobility and his connection to Rebecca's memory. "Your mom loved watching you run and play," William said, crouching to meet his son's eyes. "Remember how she used to race you on the beach? How she taught you to ride your bike? The thing that would make her saddest is knowing you weren't doing those things you loved because someone made you." Afraid. Tears spilled down Ethan's cheeks. "I don't want to forget her, Dad." "You won't," William promised. "Walking again doesn't mean leaving Mom behind. It means carrying her with you in a different way." Dr. Chen, who had stepped back to give them space for this conversation, approached again. "Would it help to have a special way to remember your mom while you're working on walking again? Some people find that having a symbol or a ritual helps them feel connected." Ethan considered this. "Like what?" "It could be anything meaningful to you," Dr. Chen suggested. "A special bracelet you wear during therapy, a photo you look at for encouragement, or maybe something your mom loved that you can keep nearby." Later that evening, William searched through Rebecca's belongings, something he had avoided doing since the accident. In her jewelry box, he found a silver compass on a chain that she had often worn while hiking, an activity she had loved, sharing with Ethan. The inscription inside read, "Find your path, follow your heart." When he gave it to Ethan the next morning, his son's face lit up in recognition. "Mom's compass. She said it would always help us find our way home if we got lost hiking." "Maybe it can help you find your way now," William suggested. From that day forward, Ethan wore the compass during every therapy session. When things got difficult or he felt discouraged, he would hold it tightly in his palm, as if drawing strength from the connection to his mother. October brought Ethan's 9th birthday. William struggled with how to celebrate, the first birthday since Rebecca's accident, and in the shadow of Catherine's betrayal. He wanted it to be special, without being overwhelming for his son, who still had difficult days adjusting to their new reality. "What if we do something different this year?" Olivia suggested during a family dinner a week before the birthday. She had taken to joining them for meals several times a week, bringing a childlike perspective that often cut through adult complications. "Instead of a big party with lots of people, what if we do an adventure day? Just people Ethan really likes doing things he really loves." Ethan perked up at this idea. "Could we go to the Space Museum in the morning and the beach in the afternoon?" "Absolutely," William agreed, relieved to see genuine enthusiasm from his son. "Who would you want to join us?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Just Olivia and Grandma Martha and Dr. Chen, and maybe Jake from my old school if he can come." Jake had been Ethan's best friend before the accident, though their contact had become less frequent during Ethan's recovery. The birthday expedition was a resounding success. They spent the morning at the California Science Center, where Ethan marveled at the space shuttle exhibit, followed by a private lunch arranged by William at a restaurant overlooking the ocean. In the afternoon, they returned to Malibu for a small beach gathering where Jake and Ethan built elaborate sandcastles while the adults watched from a comfortable distance. William noticed that Ethan used his wheelchair less throughout the day, choosing to walk short distances with his forearm crutches that Dr. Chen had introduced the previous week. Each small step represented a victory against Catherine's manipulation. As the sun began to set, turning the Pacific into a canvas of orange and pink, Ethan sat beside William on a beach blanket, his crutches laid aside. "This was the best birthday ever, Dad," he said, leaning against his father's shoulder. "Better than last year when Mom rented that whole video game truck?" William asked, surprised. Ethan nodded. "That was awesome too, but today felt real. Like we're not pretending everything is okay, but it's still okay to be happy sometimes." William put his arm around his son, struck by the simple wisdom of his words. They weren't pretending anymore. Not about grief, not about recovery, not about the complicated journey ahead of them. When they returned to the mansion that evening, William had one final surprise. In Ethan's room, he had created a small memorial space for Rebecca, a beautiful shelf holding her photograph, the hiking boots she had worn on their last family vacation, and a journal where Ethan could write messages to her. "This is your mom. Space," William explained. "So you always have somewhere to feel close to her, no matter how much other things change." Ethan ran his fingers over the items, his expression solemn but not sad. "I think she would like this." "I think so too, buddy." As October turned to November, William received an unexpected call from his attorney. Catherine had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, claiming defamation and breach of contract. "She's claiming you fabricated reasons to fire her to avoid paying the remainder of her contract," the attorney explained, "and that you damaged her professional reputation with false accusations." William was stunned. "We have the journal, we have Olivia's recording. How can she possibly think she has a case?" "She's claiming the journal was therapeutic role-playing, a technique to help Ethan externalize his fears, and that the recording captured her playing along with your paranoid accusations to de-escalate a volatile situation." The attorney sighed. "It's all nonsense, of course, but we'll need to prepare a defense." The lawsuit felt like a dark cloud over the progress they'd been making. William was determined to shield Ethan from this new stress, but the legal preparations were time-consuming and emotionally draining. "You need to document everything about Ethan's progress since she left," the attorney advised. "If he's improving, with standard therapy, after she claimed only her special methods would work, that's powerful evidence against her." Dr. Chen began keeping meticulous records of Ethan's physical improvements, while Dr. Morris documented the psychological healing that was occurring now that the manipulation had ended. They recorded video of therapy sessions showing Ethan's gradual but steady return to mobility. The most compelling evidence came unexpectedly, through Olivia. One afternoon, she was helping Martha prepare dinner when she mentioned offhandedly, "I have the videos from before, you know." Martha looked up from the vegetables she was chopping. "What videos, mija?" "Of Ms. Catherine with Ethan," Olivia explained. "From when I was trying to figure out what she was doing, I hid my tablet behind books on the shelf in the therapy room a couple times." Martha immediately called William, who was meeting with his attorney when he received the message. They reviewed the footage that evening after Ethan was asleep. 3 short videos that clearly showed Catherine's manipulative techniques. In one particularly disturbing clip, she could be seen pressing firmly on specific points on Ethan's legs when he attempted to stand, causing visible pain, then soothingly telling him, "See? Your body is warning you it's not ready. This is why we need to be patient." The attorney was confident the videos would end Catherine's lawsuit, but warned William that submitting them as evidence would make them part of the public record. "We need to consider how that might affect Ethan. These videos show him in an extremely vulnerable position." William struggled with the decision. Using the videos would ensure Catherine couldn't hurt another child, but it might also expose Ethan to unwanted attention and scrutiny. He discussed it with Dr. Morris, who suggested including Ethan in the decision in an age-appropriate way. He's been robbed of agency throughout this experience. Giving him some control over what happens next could be therapeutic. The conversation with Ethan was difficult but illuminating. William explained the situation simply, omitting the legal complexities but making it clear that the videos could help make sure Catherine couldn't do to other children what she had done to him. Ethan thought about it seriously, twisting the compass necklace between his fingers. Would other kids see the videos like kids at school? No, William assured him. They would only be seen by people involved in the legal case. But we could protect you in other ways if you don't want the videos used. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I think we should use them, he said finally. I don't want her to hurt anybody else like she hurt me. His courage brought tears to William's eyes. Despite everything Catherine had done to break his spirit, Ethan's fundamental compassion remained intact. When the attorney presented the video evidence to Catherine's legal team, they withdrew the lawsuit within 48 hours. Catherine agreed to a confidential settlement that included her surrendering her therapy license and never working with children again. The resolution of the legal threat brought a collective exhale to the household. With that shadow lifted, Ethan's progress accelerated. By Thanksgiving, he was using his crutches exclusively, the wheelchair relegated to a corner of the garage. By Christmas, he could walk short distances with just a cane. The holiday season brought its own emotional challenges. Their first Christmas without Rebecca. William was determined to honor traditions she had loved while creating space for new ones. They hung her favorite ornaments on the tree, made her special cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning, and left an empty chair at the table with a single rose, a quiet acknowledgement of her absence. But there were new joys too. Martha and Olivia brought their own traditions, filling the house with the scent of Mexican hot chocolate and the sound of Spanish Christmas carols. Dr. Chen joined them for Christmas dinner, having become a friend as well as Ethan's therapist. And on Christmas Eve, Ethan walked unassisted from the living room to the kitchen to help Martha with the holiday baking, his first solo journey through the house in nearly a year. As they gathered around the fireplace that night, watching the flames dance and listening to the sound of waves against the shore below, William looked at the faces illuminated by the firelight. His son, growing stronger every day. Martha, whose quiet wisdom had become a cornerstone of their household. Olivia, whose courage and perception had saved them from Catherine's manipulation. They weren't the family he had imagined having, nor the life he had planned. But in the wake of tragedy and betrayal, they had built something resilient and true. A home founded on honesty, courage, and the kind of love that heals rather than manipulates. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time since Rebecca's accident, William felt the faintest glimmer of peace. As winter gave way to spring, the transformation in the Parker household continued. The mansion, once a monument to grief, now bustled with life and purpose. Ethan's recovery accelerated with each passing week. By February, he had abandoned his cane, walking with only a slight limp that Dr. Chen assured them would likely disappear with continued therapy and growth. The human body is remarkably resilient, she explained during one of their now weekly sessions. Especially in children, the neural pathways are rebuilding themselves and his muscles are strengthening. The psychological barriers were actually the biggest obstacle. William watched as Ethan navigated an obstacle course Dr. Chen had set up on the lawn, his movements growing more confident with each successful step. I still can't believe how much time we lost because of Catherine. Dr. Chen's expression softened with empathy. Try to focus on the progress rather than the setbacks. Ethan is doing remarkably well now. Many children who experience trauma like his take much longer to recover, even without the additional complications you faced. She was right, of course. The psychological damage Catherine had inflicted could have been far more lasting. Dr. Morris had helped Ethan understand that his inability to walk hadn't been his fault, that an adult he trusted had manipulated his fears and exploited his grief. Those sessions had been painful but necessary, allowing Ethan to separate his physical recovery from his emotional journey through grief. With the improvement in Ethan's mobility came a desire to return to normal childhood activities. He asked to rejoin his old soccer team, a prospect that both excited and terrified William. "Are you sure you're ready for that, buddy?" William asked when Ethan first brought it up. "Soccer's pretty intense. Maybe we could start with something less physical?" Ethan's face fell. "You don't think I can do it?" William recognized the echoes of Catherine's manipulation in his own protective instinct. "That's not it at all," he said quickly. "I just want to make sure you're set up for success. But if Dr. Chen thinks you're ready, then we'll call your old coach tomorrow." The smile that spread across Ethan's face was worth every moment of parental anxiety William would endure watching his son on the soccer field. Dr. Chen approved the plan, but suggested a gradual return, starting with practices, before rejoining games, and building up slowly to full participation. Coach Martinez welcomed Ethan back with enthusiasm, having kept in touch throughout his recovery. The first practice was a milestone for the entire household. Martha packed a special snack, Olivia made encouraging signs, and William tried, unsuccessfully, not to hover as Ethan joined his teammates on the field. He was slower than before, his movements sometimes hesitant, but the joy on his face as he ran alongside his friends was unmistakable. "He's going to be fine," Olivia said, appearing beside William as he watched from the sidelines. At 10, nearly 11 now, she had developed an uncanny ability to read adult concerns. William smiled down at her. "I know. It's just hard not to worry." "My grandma says worry is just love with nowhere to go," Olivia replied, with the solemn wisdom of a child, repeating a treasured phrase. William chuckled. "Your grandma is a very wise woman." As Ethan integrated back into school activities and friendships, William found himself with more time to think about his own future. The tech company he had built had been running on autopilot for nearly a year, managed by his capable executive team, while he focused on Ethan's recovery. He had been making occasional appearances at board meetings and checking in remotely, but he hadn't been truly engaged with the business that had once consumed his days. "Have you thought about what's next for you?" Martha asked one evening as they sat on the terrace after Ethan had gone to bed. This had become a comfortable ritual. Martha would bring tea and they would discuss household matters that often evolved into deeper conversations. "What do you mean?" William asked, though he understood the question perfectly. "Ethan is healing. He's back in school playing soccer, being a normal boy again." Martha stirred honey into her tea with deliberate movements. "But what about William Parker? Are you healing too?" The question caught him off guard. He had been so focused on Ethan's recovery that he had pushed aside his own grief and trauma. "I'm not sure what healing looks like for me," he admitted. Martha nodded, unsurprised by his answer. "Perhaps it begins with remembering who you were before you became only Ethan's father and Rebecca's widower." Her words stayed with him in the days that followed. Who had he been before? An ambitious entrepreneur, certainly. A husband deeply in love with his brilliant wife. A father delighting in his son's childhood. But there had been other dimensions too. Friendships he had neglected. Interests he had abandoned. Parts of himself he had set aside in the fog of grief and crisis. One rainy afternoon, while Ethan was at a friend's house and the mansion was unusually quiet, William found himself drawn to Rebecca's study. It had remained largely untouched since the accident, preserved like a museum exhibit of their former life. He stood in the doorway for several minutes before finally stepping inside. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, or perhaps that was just his imagination. Her architectural drafting table dominated the space, still covered with the plans. For a community arts center, she had been designing before the accident. Rebecca had been a respected architect, whose practice had focused on public spaces that brought art and culture to underserved communities. William ran his fingers over her sketches, remembering how passionate she had been about this particular project, a repurposed warehouse in a struggling neighborhood of Los Angeles that would provide studio space for artists, classrooms for children, and a performance venue for community events. "You would have made it beautiful," he whispered. To the empty room. An idea began to form, tentative at first, then gathering clarity and purpose. The next morning, he contacted Rebecca's former business partner, Alexandra, whom he hadn't spoken to since the funeral. "Will, it's so good to hear from you," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "How are you and Ethan doing?" "Better," he said, finding that it was true. "Actually, I'm calling about Rebecca's last project, the Arts Center." "What happened with that?" Alexandra sighed. "The funding stalled after what happened. Without Rebecca's vision driving it, the investors got cold feet. The building's still sitting empty. Such a shame." "What if we revived it?" William asked. "As a memorial to Rebecca. I could provide the funding through a foundation in her name." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. "Are you serious?" "Completely. Rebecca believed in making art accessible to everyone. I can't think of a better way to honor her memory." The Rebecca Parker Memorial Arts Center became William's focus over the following months. He established a foundation, secured the warehouse property, and worked with Alexandra to bring Rebecca's original vision to life, while adding elements that reflected her spirit and passions. Ethan was involved from the beginning, joining planning meetings and offering suggestions from a child's perspective. The project became a way for him to connect with his mother's legacy, to understand the work that had been so important to her. "Mom would have loved this," he said, as they toured the construction site together, hard hats perched on their heads. The cavernous space was beginning to take shape, walls defining studios and classrooms, a soaring central atrium that would showcase community artwork. "She would have," William agreed. "And she would be so proud of you for helping make it happen." As the Arts Center progressed, so did the healing within the Parker household. Ethan completed his physical therapy, graduating from Dr. Chen's care, with a celebration that included cake and a framed certificate of extraordinary bravery and determination. He continued to see Dr. Morris monthly, processing his experiences in age-appropriate ways and developing tools to manage the complex emotions that occasionally still surfaced. Olivia had become Ethan's closest friend, their bond forged through shared experience and genuine affection. Despite their age difference, she was now 11 to his 9, they found common ground in their love of art, science fiction, and building elaborate worlds in the video games they played together. The carriage house renovation had been completed, giving Martha and Olivia a beautiful home on the property, while maintaining their connection to the main household. William's relationship with Martha had evolved into something that defied simple categorization. She was an employee, yes, but also a trusted confidant and co-parent figure for both children. Her wisdom and steady presence had become essential to the functioning of their unconventional family unit. "You know," William said to her one evening, as they watched the children play on the lawn below the terrace, "I never properly thanked you." Martha looked at him questioningly. "For staying," he clarified. "For believing in Olivia when she came to you with concerns about Catherine, for helping us rebuild afterward." Martha's smile was warm. "Some journeys we choose, Mr. Parker. Others choose us." "William," he corrected gently. "After everything we've been through, I think we're well past Mr. Parker." As summer approached again, marking nearly a year since Catherine's departure and 18 months since the accident, William realized they had reached a kind of equilibrium. The grief hadn't disappeared, it never would, but it had found its place in their lives, no longer overwhelming, but present as a reminder of love that endured beyond loss. Plans for the Arts Center's grand opening were underway, scheduled for what would have been Rebecca's birthday in July. The project had garnered attention throughout Los Angeles, with artists, educators, and community organizers eager to be involved in what was becoming a landmark institution even before its doors opened. One warm June afternoon, William received an unexpected call from Dr. Reynolds, whom he hadn't spoken to in several months. "I thought you should know," Reynolds said after they had exchanged pleasantries. "Catherine Blackwood has resurfaced." William's stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" "She surrendered her license." "Yes, but apparently she's reinvented herself as a holistic wellness coach for families dealing with childhood trauma. She's changed her name slightly. She's going by Catherine Blake now, but it's definitely her. A colleague recognized her at a conference in San Diego. Can she do that legally? William asked, anger rising in his chest. She agreed never to work with children again. The agreement specified professional therapy, Reynolds explained. This falls into a gray area. She's careful to say she's not providing medical or psychological services, just support and guidance. It's all very vague and unregulated. After hanging up, William sat in his study wrestling with what to do with this information. The idea that Catherine, or Catherine as she now called herself, was once again positioning herself to access vulnerable families made him physically ill. The legal settlement had been designed to prevent exactly this kind of situation, but she had found a loophole. He was still deep in thought when Martha knocked on the open door. "Is everything all right? You missed lunch?" William looked up, realizing hours had passed. "Catherine is working with families again. She's changed her name and is calling herself a wellness coach instead of a therapist." Martha's expression darkened. "That woman has no conscience." "The problem is, she's not technically violating our agreement," William explained. "I'm not sure what I can do legally." "Perhaps the question isn't what legal action you can take," Martha suggested, "but what moral action you should take." William understood immediately. "You think I should go public with what happened to Ethan?" "I think families deserve to know who they're trusting with their children," Martha said simply. The decision wasn't simple. Going public would mean exposing Ethan's experience to scrutiny, potentially reopening wounds that were finally healing. But staying silent meant other children might suffer as Ethan had. That evening, after the children were asleep, William called Dr. Morris to discuss the situation and get her professional opinion on how it might affect Ethan. "He's made remarkable progress," Dr. Morris acknowledged. "But this would be a significant stressor. If you decide to proceed, we would need to prepare him carefully and ensure he has extra support throughout the process." "What would you do in my position?" William asked. There was a long pause before Dr. Morris answered. "Professionally, I can't make that recommendation, but speaking as a human being who's witnessed what Catherine did to your son, I wouldn't want any other child to experience that." William spent a sleepless night weighing his options. By morning, he had made his decision. He would take action, but not alone. First, he needed to have an age-appropriate conversation with Ethan. The morning sun filtered through the windows of the breakfast nook as William carefully approached the conversation he'd been rehearsing in his mind all night. Ethan was focused on his cereal, occasionally glancing at the tablet propped against the orange juice pitcher, where he was reading about NASA's latest mission. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something important," William began, keeping his voice calm and measured as Dr. Morris had advised during their late-night phone consultation. Ethan looked up, immediately alert to the shift in his father's tone. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong here," William assured him. "But I found out yesterday that Miss Catherine is working with other families and children again. She changed her name and is calling herself something different, but she's doing similar work." Ethan's spoon clattered against the bowl. "But she's not supposed to. She hurt me." "I know, buddy. That's why I wanted to talk to you. There might be a way to help make sure other kids don't get hurt like you did, but it would mean telling people outside our family about what happened to you." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his young face serious as he considered the implications. "Like in the news?" "Possibly," William acknowledged. "We would work with Ms. Lisa, you remember my friend who's a lawyer, to share what happened in a way that protects you as much as possible. But yes, people would know our story." "Would I have to talk to reporters?" Ethan asked, his apprehension clear. "No," William said firmly. "You wouldn't have to talk to anyone you don't want to. This would be adults handling adult problems. But because it's your story too, I wanted to ask how you feel about it." Ethan twisted the compass necklace that rarely left his neck, a habit he'd developed when thinking through difficult situations. "Would it really help other kids?" "I believe it would," William said. "People need to know that someone who hurt you is still out there working with vulnerable children." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then I think we should do it. But..." He hesitated. Could Olivia be with me when people are talking about it? She always makes me feel braver. William felt a surge of pride at his son's courage and self-awareness. Of course she can, if Martha agrees. Later that morning, William convened a family meeting in the sunroom. Himself, Ethan, Martha, and Olivia. He explained the situation in terms all of them could understand and outlined what might happen if they chose to go public with their story. There would likely be media attention, he warned. Reporters might try to contact us. Our privacy would be affected for a while. But we'd be helping other families, Olivia said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. At 11, her sense of justice remained as strong as it had been when she first discovered Catherine's manipulation. That's the hope, William confirmed. Martha, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. Whatever you decide, we stand. With you. But I would suggest involving legal counsel from the beginning to establish clear boundaries. William nodded, grateful once again for her practical wisdom. I've already called Lisa. She's coming over this afternoon. Lisa Chen had been William's corporate attorney for years before becoming a trusted friend. She arrived at the mansion with her characteristic energy and focus, armed with a leather portfolio and a determined expression. I've reviewed the settlement agreement from last year, she said, as they settled in William's study. Catherine, or Catherine as she's calling herself now, is technically operating in a grey area. She's not presenting herself as a licensed therapist, which was specifically prohibited. But she's clearly violating the spirit of the agreement by working with vulnerable children again. What are our options? William asked. We could file for an injunction based on the implied terms of the settlement, Lisa suggested. But that would be a lengthy process with uncertain results. Going public, as you suggested, might be more immediately effective in warning families away from her. And more satisfying, William admitted. Lisa smiled briefly. That too. But we need to be strategic. A media circus wouldn't serve Ethan's best interests. Together, they crafted a plan. Rather than holding a press conference or giving interviews to multiple outlets, William would work with a respected journalist from the Los Angeles Times to tell their story in a carefully controlled way. The article would focus on the systemic issues that allowed someone like Catherine to exploit vulnerable families, with the Parker case as the central example, but not the only one. Lisa would reach out to her contacts to identify other families who might have been affected by Catherine's practices. Preparations for the article coincided with the final weeks before the Rebecca Parker Memorial Arts Center's grand opening. William found himself juggling interviews with the journalist, meetings with the Arts Center board, and the everyday responsibilities of parenting a 9-year-old boy who, despite his remarkable recovery, still had occasional difficult days. You're taking on too much, Martha observed one evening as William reviewed the latest draft of the Times article at the kitchen table, his laptop surrounded by Arts Center floor plans and budget spreadsheets. William sighed, rubbing his eyes. There's just a lot happening at once. That's by your choice, Martha pointed out gently. The Arts Center opening could be postponed. The article could wait a few weeks. Catherine isn't waiting. To find new families to manipulate, William countered. And the Arts Center opening is scheduled for Rebecca's birthday. That feels important to maintain. Martha studied him for a moment. You're using busyness to avoid feeling, William. I've seen it before. Her directness caught him off guard. What am I avoiding exactly? Moving forward, she said simply. You've dedicated the past 18 months to Ethan's recovery and Rebecca's memorial. Those are worthy causes. But at some point, you need to consider your own life and what comes next for you. As usual, Martha's insight cut to the heart of the matter. William had been so focused on fighting Catherine's lingering influence and preserving Rebecca's legacy that he hadn't allowed himself to think about his own future. The idea of building a life that wasn't defined by loss and betrayal seemed almost disloyal. The Los Angeles Times article was published on a Sunday in early July, 3 weeks before the Arts Center opening. Titled, The Perfect Caregiver, How a Therapist Manipulated a Grieving Family and the System That Failed to Stop Her, it detailed Catherine's systematic deception of the Parker family and her psychological manipulation of Ethan. The journalist had done a thorough investigation, uncovering 2 other families with similar experiences and documenting Catherine's pattern of targeting vulnerable households dealing with trauma or loss. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. By Monday morning, Catherine's newly established coaching practice had shut down its website. By Wednesday, the California Department of Consumer Affairs had launched an investigation into the regulatory gaps that allowed her to continue working with families despite surrendering her therapy license. Several of Catherine's current clients contacted the Times reporter, sharing their own concerns about her methods. William had prepared for public attention, but the response to the article exceeded his expectations. His phone filled with messages from friends, colleagues, and even strangers expressing support and sharing their own experiences with manipulative caregivers. Dr. Reynolds called to let him know that the medical board was considering using the case as a teaching example for identifying and preventing similar situations. Through it all, William maintained a protective bubble around Ethan. As promised, the boy didn't have to speak to any reporters or answer questions about his experience. Olivia stayed by his side during the days following the article's publication, the 2 children retreating to their favorite spots on the property: the game room, the beach, the treehouse William had built the previous spring. Their friendship had become one of the most positive outcomes of the whole ordeal. 10 days after the article appeared, William received a call from an unfamiliar number with a San Diego area code. He almost let it go to voicemail, wary of unknown callers who might be reporters, but something made him answer. "Is this William Parker?" a woman's voice asked, hesitant and uncertain. "Yes, it is," he confirmed cautiously. "My name is Diane Hoffman. I need to apologize to you and your son." William's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No," she said quickly. "But I worked with Catherine Blackwood. I was the physical therapist assistant she hired to help with your son's case." William sat down heavily in his desk chair. Catherine had occasionally mentioned an assistant who helped with Ethan's exercises when she needed support, but they had never met this person. "I didn't know," Diane continued, her voice breaking. "I swear I didn't know she was deliberately keeping him from improving. She told me he had severe nerve damage that made traditional therapy too painful, that we had to follow her specialized protocol." "Why are you calling now?" William asked, not unkindly but firmly. "I read the article," Diane explained, "and everything suddenly made sense. All the things that felt wrong about how she managed his case, how she insisted I never speak directly to you, how she documented progress differently in her official notes compared to what we actually observed." There was a pause before she added, "I have records, Mr. Parker, notes I kept privately because something felt off. They might help with the investigation." William arranged for Diane to speak with Lisa and the authorities, investigating Catherine. Her testimony and documentation proved invaluable, providing insider confirmation of Catherine's deliberate manipulation. As the Arts Center opening approached, media attention around Catherine gradually subsided, replaced by positive coverage of the memorial project. William threw himself into the final preparations, working closely with Alexandra to ensure every detail honored Rebecca's vision. The warehouse had been transformed into a light-filled creative space with studios, classrooms, performance areas, and a central gallery showcasing local artists. The night before the opening, William took Ethan for a private tour of the completed center. They walked through the quiet spaces that would soon be filled with artists, students, and community members, their footsteps echoing on the polished concrete floors. "It feels like Mom is here," Ethan said, as they stood in the soaring central atrium where Rebecca's architectural drawings had been framed and displayed alongside photographs of her completed projects. "I think she is, in a way," William replied. "This place exists because of her ideas, her passion for bringing art to everyone." Ethan nodded, running his hand along a wooden bench that had been crafted from reclaimed timber from the original warehouse structure. "Do you think she'd be proud of us? For what we did about Catherine, too?" William knelt to meet his son's eyes. "I know she would. Your mom believed in standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, just like you did. The grand opening of the Rebecca Parker Memorial Arts Center drew hundreds of attendees, artists, community members, civic leaders, and the media. William had worried that the recent publicity around Catherine might overshadow the event, but the focus remained firmly on Rebecca's legacy and the positive impact the center would have on the community. Standing at the podium to deliver the opening remarks, William looked out at the gathered crowd. In the front row sat Ethan, between Martha and Olivia, his posture straight and proud, no sign of the physical limitations that had once confined him to a wheelchair. Behind them were Dr. Reynolds, Dr. Chen, and others who had helped them through the darkest period of their lives. Rebecca Parker believed that art could heal, connect, and transform, William began. She designed spaces where creativity could flourish, where barriers between people could dissolve, where beauty could be accessible to everyone regardless of background or circumstance. As he spoke about Rebecca's vision and the journey to bring the Arts Center to reality, William felt a profound sense of completion. They had faced tragedy, betrayal, and manipulation, yet emerged stronger and more compassionate. Ethan was walking, running, playing soccer. The truth about Catherine had been revealed, potentially protecting countless other families from similar manipulation, and Rebecca's legacy would live on through the Arts Center that bore her name. Today isn't just about opening a building, William concluded. It's about opening possibilities. It's about transforming pain into purpose, absence into presence, endings into new beginnings. Rebecca showed us how to do that through her life and work, and now we carry that forward together. The crowd erupted in applause as William stepped away from the podium. Ethan ran up to join him for the ceremonial ribbon cutting, moving with the easy confidence of a child who had reclaimed his body and his future. Together, father and son cut the ribbon stretched across the main entrance, officially opening the center to the community that would bring it to life. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around them, William found a quiet moment, with Martha on the center's rooftop garden, another element inspired by Rebecca's love of green spaces within urban environments. "You were right," he said, as they looked out over the city lights spreading toward the distant ocean. "I was using busyness to avoid thinking about what comes next," Martha smiled. "And now?" "Now I think I'm ready to figure that out," William replied. "Not to replace what we lost, but to build something new that honors it." "That sounds like healing to me," Martha said softly. 6 months later, on a crisp January morning, William stood on the beach below the mansion, watching as Ethan and Olivia raced along the shoreline, their laughter carried on the ocean breeze. Martha sat beside him on a driftwood log, a thermos of coffee between them. The Arts Center was thriving, with programs at capacity and a waiting list for studio space. The story of Catherine's manipulation had led to regulatory changes in California, closing the loopholes that had allowed her to continue working with vulnerable families. And Ethan, now 10 years old, showed no physical signs of his ordeal. His recovery complete in ways that had once seemed impossible. "I was thinking," William said, turning to Martha, "about adding a family wing to the house. The carriage house is lovely, but it seems silly to have so much space in the main house going unused while you and Olivia are separated from us." Martha looked at him with surprise. "Are you sure that's what you want?" William nodded. "This past year has taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stand by you, who tell you difficult truths, who help you find your way forward when you're lost." He paused, watching the children splash at the water's edge. "You and Olivia are family, Martha. I'd like to make that official if you're willing." Martha's eyes shone with unexpected tears. "We would be honored." As they sat together watching the children play, William reflected on the long, difficult journey that had brought them to this moment. The glass mansion on the cliff above them was no longer a monument to grief, but a home filled with life and possibility. The darkness that had enveloped them after Rebecca's accident and during Catherine's deception had given way to a different kind of light. Not the blinding brightness of perfect happiness, but the gentle, sustainable glow of healing and hope. Ethan ran up to them, breathless and grinning, Olivia close behind. "Dad, We found the perfect spot for that tide pool project for science class. Can we bring my camera down later to document it? Of course, William agreed, ruffling his son's hair. We have all the time in the world. And they did. Time to remember what was lost. Time to cherish what remained. Time to build something new from the fragments of what had been broken. Time to walk forward together, step by careful step, into a future none of them could have imagined, but all of them had helped create. As they gathered their things to head back up to the house, William took one last look at the ocean stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in that vastness, he felt Rebecca's presence, not as a ghost haunting their lives, but as a light guiding them forward.